everyone, and welcome to the African Esquire Show on We Charge Colonialism TV. I'm your host, Tierney Cherie, and today we're going to go through some topics in African news for this week. So let's get started. Are you ready for a new world order? That was a topic that was posed at the World Government Summit. Check out this video.
Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very good morning on what is the first official day of World Government Summit here at Dubai Expo 2020. And the title of this session, are we ready for a new world order?
Underpins of world order is always the financial system. I was very privileged. My father was an advisor to Nixon when they came off the gold standard in '71, and so I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights. But what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
So if you've never heard of the World Government Summit, I know I hadn't prior to this coming out. I'm going to read from their website. They say that they are a global neutral nonprofit organization dedicated to shaping the future of governments. The summit and its various activities explores the agenda of the next generation of governments, focusing on harnessing innovation and technology to solve universal challenges facing humanity. It's also very notable to point out that this is essentially another branch of the same forum of the World Economic Forum. So a lot of the same people who would attend the World Economic Forum. So for example, the guy who's actually the founder, Claus, whatever his last name is, he was actually in attendance, and a lot of other prominent people have attended in the past. The summit was in Dubai, and a lot of people are talking about this speech that was said by this particular woman. So I'm not going to go into details about this because I'm going to be writing an article by the 1st of next month that will come out. We're going to discuss Africa's role inside of this. How is Africa going to deal with these changes? How is Africa going to do with these plans that are being poised by the ruling elite? We know Joe Biden has said similar things as of recently. And what does this mean? Does this mean something negative? Does this mean something positive? I would say no, more likely than not, when you have these people planning things for the future of the world, it doesn't mean anything positive. And so we're going to explore that in detail inside of an article I'm going to release on the 1st of May. So I'll leave it there for now. Zelensky of Ukraine has appealed to Macky Sall, seeking to address the African Union. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has again reached out to the African Union for support in his nation's war with Russia, calling for his Senegalese counterpart, Macky Sall, on Monday to discuss the crisis. Zelensky said he provided an update to Sall, the current president of the AU, on the Ukrainian struggle against the Russian invasion and the terrible crimes of the aggressor, says the article. Sall acknowledged the call in his own social media message, noting that Zelensky, who has made numerous appeals to global leaders and legislators, also wants the opportunity to address the African Union. So this is essentially going to be a way to get the African Union to allow this, is to say, hey, he's doing this to all the other major bodies across the world. So therefore, African Union, you should feel special too, because you'll get to be accounted as one of these big institutions, big international bodies worthy of having his presence. He said, "We discussed the impact of the war in Ukraine on the world economy and the need to favor dialogue for a negotiated outcome to the conflict," said Sal. The conversation touched on an AU statement that was released on February 24th. It called for an immediate ceasefire and a return to negotiations in order to preserve the world from the consequences of planetary conflict and in the interest of peace and stability and international relations in the service of all peoples of the world. The previous AU statement recognized the territorial integrity and national sovereignty of Ukraine, as have a number of African leaders speaking at the United Nations Security Council and other settings. While African nations have expressed support for the Ukrainian people, they've also sought to remain neutral, and many have been lukewarm about outright condemnation of the Russian government led by Vladimir Putin. And of course, this is something that has been very triggering for the West. Right now, Africa is basically being marketed as being, or being depicted rather, as being this Russian controlled continent, we're going to ignore all the other foreign forces that are present inside of Africa. That's what's being marketed because they want Africa to be on accord with the West when it comes to this war between Russia and Ukraine. And of course, Africa is being neutral, as they should be. You should be neutral. If this is not your war, if this does not involve you, let them settle their affairs on their own. So Africa's neutrality has been seen as a threat to basically the dominance of the current global order, where the United States and NATO get to tell other African countries, other indigenous countries around the world what they're going to do and who they're going to advocate, what they're going to advocate for. Now, this actually goes into the next story. So let's just go to that right now. The European Union plans to counter Russia with food diplomacy in North Africa. That's what's being reported. The European Union aims to address rising wheat and fertilizer prices, expected shortages in the Balkans, North Africa, and the Middle East with food diplomacy to counter Russia's narrative on the impact of its Ukraine invasion, EU diplomats and officials say. They say food insecurity was causing resentment in vulnerable countries in these regions, while Moscow was portraying the crisis as a consequence of Western sanctions on Russia, one European Union diplomat said. This posed a potential threat to EU influence, the diplomat said, which it plans to tackle with food diplomacy and a battle of narratives. I just thought that was very telling, that whenever they actually tell you how they're using aid and how they're using media, they're actually admitting it right here. It says food diplomacy and a battle of narratives, essentially saying that this aid that we're giving, we're going to use that as leverage in order to get you to comply with our narrative, and we're going to push our narrative using food diplomacy. Crazy to hear them actually admit this, but it says President Vladimir Putin said last week that the West's sanctions against Russia had fomented a global food crisis and spiraling energy prices. Now, this is just important to keep in mind in general. This has to have you thinking, what is going on with all the other aid projects inside of the African continent, where food is being used to get political gain by other countries, by outside countries? When they say food diplomacy, how could you even stomach the integrity to say that? You're basically using a carrot, in front of hungry people, saying, if you take this, if you listen to what we're saying right here, I can give you something to eat. And of course, this means that something that I've already known, I hope you've already known, that many of these food programs, they're not about feeding the people. They're really about compliance. They're really about depicting the West a certain way. To this day, many people do think that the West is like their savior, just because many of them might have seen on the news, you have the United Nations, or you have these different U.S. aid organizations coming into African nations or other nations with food trucks and handing them out, so they get this image that this country is good automatically, that anything that this country says must be true, because they don't see the other countries out there handing out food. But here you go. This is what it's called, food diplomacy. So there's a methodology behind handing out free food. And this is something, of course, you should have already known, but this is going to reinforce it, hopefully, in the minds of people who get confused about whether or not these people are on your side or not on your side. Really, they're on their own side. They're trying to push their own narratives. And that's why we have to be very careful when accepting these types of gifts, whenever it comes to these countries that are trying to get our compliance with their agenda, even if it goes against our own personal well-being. A lot of people are talking about Black Lives Matter, the organization that's now an international organization. It's all over the world, really. The organization that was really created as a response to the killings of particularly Africans inside of the United States. Now, something new that came out. A lot of people were talking about the fact that Black Lives Matter bought a $6 million home, which is egregious. But something else that came out is that they have been using tech giants in order to censor any criticism of the moves that they make, which is a very agent-like behavior, obviously. So I'm just going to read from this article. It says, Black Lives Matter shows how liberal groups weaponize social media censorship. Exactly a year ago, the New York Post reported on the purchase of 4 other multi-million-dollar high-end homes by BLM co-founder Patrisse Cullors. The story described the homes no differently than it would any other celebrity home purchase. All the information contained in the article was gleaned from the public records, including the photos. No addresses were listed. But within days, users on Facebook were banned from sharing the story on the platform itself, on Facebook Messenger, like those are private messages, and on Instagram, which Facebook owns. Despite the fact that all the information discussed was a matter of public record, Facebook flagged the article for violating their community standards, specifically the privacy and personal information policy. A year later, Facebook, now Meta, still classifies the story as abusive, and it prevents it from being shared on its platforms. Now we know why. Buried in the New York Magazine's reporting is this little nugget. Other conversations of the Black Lives Matter Security Hub chat show efforts to monitor social media for negative mentions of the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, with members using their influence with the platforms to have such remarks removed. In other words, Black Lives Matter appear to have lobbied Facebook to have the New York Post story blocked from circulation for no other reason than it could be used to criticize them. And because BLM is a politically powerful, politically favored, and revered by America's elite, Facebook agreed. But not only that, Facebook, in continuing to ban the circulation of the story, is still running cover for a Black Lives Matter movement, even as it faces legal and tax inquiries. So this is pretty serious if it's true. First of all, any type of close alliances when it comes to major tech platforms, so YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of these ones that are also censoring other type of content that is more radical, that's always something that has to be criticized and something that has to be questioned. Particularly because we see how Facebook moves. Like, Facebook is literally an agent of the state. Not only is it an agent of the state for the things that it blocks and the things that it censors, but it's an agent of the state literally, because if you actually do research about the CIA and other national security organizations, they literally have contracts with these social media sites. So they're gathering information, or they will take down things like, if let's say you post something about the Palestinian resistance, they will take down things at the request of national security agencies. So these are agencies that are directly linked to the state, which leads me to think, if Black Lives Matter has been doing this, then this is just further credence to the idea that they are a product of the state. They're not a product of an authentic movement. They must be a product, even possibly a creation of one of these national security agencies. We really don't know. I was on Black Lives Matter, not Black Lives Matter. I was on Black Power Media recently, and we were talking about the fact that they are controlled opposition, and controlled opposition many times is created by the state. They're created basically to give the appearance of radicalness. They're created to give the appearance of moving forward, while we're really just being handcuffed and not moving anywhere. So this is something that definitely needs to be looked into more, definitely needs to be questioned more, and definitely, if you are close into the Black Lives Matter ranks, please find this out. And if you are about your people, out it, because this is something that is really egregious if it's true. This story I don't have much commentary on, but it's just an FYI. So report came out that said crypto users in Africa grew by 2,500% in 2021. 2,500% in 2021. It said cryptocurrency adoption in Africa is on the march despite socioeconomic factors and headwinds. A positive report by cryptocurrency exchange KuCoin shows that crypto transactions increased by up to 2,670% in 2022. An astonishing growth trend that the steep influx relates to the low values that have been observed during previous periods. The number of crypto transactions in Africa constitutes roughly 2.8% of global volumes, which is, pretty low, obviously, given the continent's size. But it's something I think that's interesting to keep track of. A lot of people are pro crypto. I'm not pro or against crypto, but I do think that one thing that people are missing about crypto, some people think is a way to basically be free from traditional banking, which we know is inherently, corrupt. On the other hand, something that we should also keep in mind is that a lot of people are pushing. So the idea that in the future, cryptocurrencies will not be some type of free-for-all where everyone cannot be tracked, but it will be necessarily tracked. So this is what a lot of the elites are talking about. This is what they're pushing. And the thing about this that obviously should basically, make you think is that if that does happen, and I think when it does happen, because it's happening, you have the U.S. and other countries already creating centralized currencies, then really your transactions wherever you are in the world can be tracked very easily. So that's just an FYI, something to think about. Last story is Jacob Zuma, former president of South Africa. He's back home in Kandla after having a health scare. Former President Jacob Zuma is spending the rest of his 80th birthday on Tuesday afternoon in his Nkandla home in KwaZulu-Natal after a minor health scare. He was rushed to a Durban hospital at around 1 p.m. on Sunday after his blood levels suddenly shot up. We don't know why, but he is stable now. That's what a source close to the family has said. Zuma was a no-show during his corruption trial proceeding in Pietermaritzburg High Court on Monday due to ill health. The former president, who is on medical parole, was due to stand trial for corruption and fraud charges relating to the 1999 arms deal. His co-accused is Thales, a French arms company. So a lot of people, if you don't remember, recently there was a lot of protests inside of South Africa, I believe it was last year, in response to Zuma being incarcerated. He's now home on medical parole because he's dealing with some health issues. He's 80 years old, by the way. So it's very interesting that they're focusing so much energy on this 80-year-old man. Meanwhile, you have all of these robbers, stealers of land, just living like lavishly in South Africa on plenitude of land. Meanwhile, most of the people are being confined to these very, very dense and unsuitable living conditions inside of townships. So, but Jacob Zuma, he is home right now and he's still facing these charges. So we'll see what happens. It's interesting because a lot of people they realize how tense this is. He's trying to be used as the scapegoat right now and the focal point of what's wrong with South Africa. But we know that what's wrong with South Africa is a lot more significant and a lot more entrenched than this one individual. So it's something to keep watch of. That's it for this week. Just to remind everyone, please do obviously like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please do add yourself to my Telegram group. Telegram is decentralized. I'm really not into social media all like that nowadays, but I do post on Telegram anytime that I do a video or anytime I write an article or anytime anything that's significant, really. So you can go to Telegram. The link is down below. It's very easy to download. And from there, also, I would say you could visit wechargecolonialism.org. There you can donate and support WCC as we're trying to get information out there. And in addition, while you're on that page, please do click the tab that says AUMD. That's Africa Unity Movement for Decolonization. We're having a convention, Pan-African Unity or Perish, a call for the abolition of neocolonialism. That will be July 21st through the 23rd, or 21st to 23rd, I believe. Check the dates. But essentially, that's going to be a virtual conference, although hybrid. It's also going to be hosted by Zimbabwe, and also we're going to have some other organizations that are going to be a focal point as far as the different African struggles as well. So you can register for that, and you can also see the next ad that's going to play if you want to see a little bit more about it. So thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you on the next video.
I think what we are suffering from is ideological confusion. That is, that we're not clear, we're not thinking clearly, and that we need a context within which to answer the question, is something good or bad? We assume that we have the same goals, but we never say what they are. It's time for us to think and articulate and establish our goals as Black nationalists and Pan-Africanists. We need vision, we need clarity. Otherwise, we can't answer the question, is it good for African people? Nationalist goal is self-determination. In the spirit of Delaney, Garvey, Malcolm, Amos, it is Pan-African commitment, that is the unity of African people worldwide and one Africa on the continent as a basis for African strength. So we are about building a Pan-African world order based on the principles of Ma'at, not in imitation of a European order. Ma'at as justice and truth. We need a nation concept, as Dr. Clark told us. A Black economic program, a cultural program, an independent political organization, independent Black media, independent African-centered education financed by us and controlled by us. All of this presupposes, very importantly, an African Black identity.